Welcome to this Parliamentary Oversight Committee. My name is Gillian Bosman. I'm going to ask that we introduce ourselves for the record, starting with the members in the chambers, and then we will move to the members online.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, colleagues. My name is Noko Masipa.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Benedicte van Minnen.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ayanda Barnes.
Good morning. I'm Basil Pietras.
Morning, Chairperson, and morning to our learned colleagues. I'm Emery Boyson, and I'm alternate member for this committee. Thank you.
Molweni, my name is Noma French Mbombo, alternate member for the committee.
Greetings to all. My name is Dwayne Jacobs.
Can we go to those members online?
Morning, Chairperson. Wendy Kaiser-Philander, member of the committee.
I don't see any other members online. Thank you very much, colleagues. Colleagues, I'm now going to hand over to the very large delegation from the Provincial Parliament and ask that they introduce themselves.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, colleagues. Dalen Mitchell.
Good morning, Chair and colleagues. Regan Allen.
Morning, Chairperson and honourable members. Romeo Adams, Secretary to Parliament.
Good morning, Chair. Nicole Peterson, CFO.
Good morning, Chair and members. Dawood Jawadi, Manager Finance.
Good morning, Chairperson and honourable members. I'm Margot Goldstone, Director for Strategy.
Good morning, Chairperson and members. I'm a Senior Officer in the Directorate Strategy.
Good morning, Chair, members, colleagues. Vernon Titus, Director, Institutional Enablement.
Good morning, Chair, members and colleagues. My name is Lubabalo Stemele, Director, Parliamentary Support Services.
Good morning, I'm Lurica Elliott in the Speaker's Office.
Morning, Chair. Morning, members. Morning, colleagues. Yanni Ace, Speaker's Office.
Morning, everybody. Temba Keswa, PEO.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. Ridwan Babu, Manager, Knowledge Management and Information Services.
Good morning, Andre Leroux, Senior Legal Advisor.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. Charles Doman, Sergeant at Arms.
Morning, Chair. Good morning, members. Craig Mattia, Senior Risk Officer.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members, colleagues. Usman Alexander, Manager, Supply Chain and Asset Management.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, members. Good morning, colleagues. The name is Mario Sassman. I'm the Manager for Committee Support. Thank you.
Morning, Chair and members. Kobe Skricker, Manager, Information Technology.
Good morning, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members. Sunal Fushia, Public Engagement.
Good morning, James Retief, Manager, Stakeholder Management and Communication Services.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Zinzinikelo, Manager, Financial Compliance and Internal Control.
Good morning, Genevieve Ackham, Manager in the Office of the Secretary.
Thank you very much. Members, I don't need to remind you of the rules of engagement, but for those members online, if you'd like to have an opportunity to speak or raise a point of order, please use the raise your hand function and we will come to you. The same for the members in the chambers. We are here to discuss to get a briefing by the Western Cape Provincial Parliament on the 2024-2025 annual performance plan and the quarterly performance report for the fourth quarter, both financial and non-financial performance. And then we are also here to consider the report as well as adopt some minutes. I'm going to hand over directly to the Speaker and then to the Secretary for the presentation, which was emailed to members, and I think a copy was also provided this morning.
Thank you very much. Chair, I think let me kick off by saying thank you very much for this engagement. This is the first engagement of the Parliamentary Oversight Committee for this term of office. Chair, as always, we are looking forward to a robust engagement in the interest of the members, of all members of Parliament, but also of the citizens that we serve. I'm going to ask that through the Secretary that we flight the presentation, and we will then field questions as they come up. But we look forward to a robust engagement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, Speaker, honourable members. So the fourth quarterly report, both financial and non-financial, deals with the reporting period 2023-2024, which would have been the last full reporting period for the sixth Parliament. The WCPP had engaged the POC in the previous parliamentary term on quarters 1, 2, and 3. So this quarter basically wraps up that last full parliamentary term. The annual performance plan for 2024-2025 attends to the last year of the strategic plan that was active during the sixth parliamentary term, because in terms of the Financial Management of Parliament and Legislatures Act, by November 2024, the Parliament, legislatures and the Western Cape Provincial Parliament should have drafted its new strategic plan. So Ms. Goldstone will be taking us through the 2024-2025 APP and the fourth quarter non-performance, but I thought maybe just sketching that specific scenario. So what we are reporting on and accounting for still speaks to the previous parliamentary term in terms of the reporting period, but it also wraps up the strategic plan for that specific period. Chair, maybe just some guidance. Would you want us to do the quarterly reports first and then the APP? And then we can, because it just then logically wraps up that part of the business and then deals with the new part of the business that we're currently in at the moment, if that's in order. Ms. Goldstone, if there's nothing further.
Thank you, Secretary. So as the Secretary indicates, this is the presentation on the non-financial performance for the previous financial year, which is 23-24. If I can just scroll down. We have sticky keys. Okay, there we go. So the presentation will cover a brief summary overview of the performance and then go into the detailed performance report. For quarter 4, maybe just to start with, so just to indicate that the quarterly reporting is actually a legislated requirement in terms of the Financial Management of Parliament and Provincial Legislatures Act, which regulates the work of Parliament. Both the accounting officer and the executive authority have a responsibility to table a quarterly report within 30 days. Well, the accounting officer has to prepare and present it to the executive authority within 30 days after the quarter's conclusion. The executive authority, in turn, has to then table the quarterly reports and refer them to the oversight mechanism. Obviously, this is quite important for general transparency, accountability, and answerability of Parliament itself. Whilst we hold the executive accountable, we are also, by reporting in this form as legislated, displaying and underscoring these values. So in terms of the key activities, the institutional highlights are just a couple of slides that show what were the key activities undertaken in that quarter. So quarter 4 would have been January to March of 2024. And these are some of our major activities. We had hosted the 2024 State of the Province Address in Paarl in February, and then the tabling of the budget, 2024-25 budget in March, and as well as the debate on the budget, which happened here in the chamber at Well Street. A big part of what we were concerned with in the fourth quarter would have been preparation for the transition to the 7th Parliament. And a number of activities would have been underway. There was consultation with the Office of the Chief Justice regarding transitional arrangements. For example, the procedure that would be followed on the day of the first sitting, which essentially established the new Parliament for the 7th term. As well as the appointment or the swearing in of the Premier, the presiding officers and all members. Preparations for the exit of 6 parliamentary members, preparation for onboarding and induction of our members, and then quite a lot of work around infrastructural arrangements to accommodate the new members, as well as preparation of a legacy report. As part of what we had done in the 4th quarter, we had also, as an ongoing process, reviewed the standing rules. There were proposals for amendments that needed to be made to the rules administratively. So we have a structure which we call the Procedural Hub, which is an administrative working group that considers procedural matters. And the amendments were processed through the Procedural Hub, but it was a decision that the revised standing rules would only be confirmed by the Rules Committee in the 7th Parliament. So that is forthcoming. And then a review of the Oversight and Accountability Model and Framework. So we have a framework that governs how oversight is conducted in the WCPP. And over periodically, this is reviewed to assess whether the practices that are at play in the WCPP are aligned to best practice. And so this was an administrative exercise where we had identified some areas that require strengthening. Two of the areas that were, for example, identified are the procedure regulating the practice of executive undertakings in this legislature, which is basically executive undertakings would be commitments made by a minister, for example, in the House during a debate, which we would then have to register, and the Speaker would then have to write to the responsible member of the executive for a response with regard to that undertaking that he would have made in the House. So the procedure governing that was proposed but not yet fully adopted, and this is part of what we were doing in the 7th Parliament, firstly codifying it as part of the rules, and then also developing the actual administrative guidelines that support that. The other area, or another area, is post-legislative scrutiny, which has been on the table for a while for consideration. We now have a draft concept around this. Essentially, it is about the legislature being able to assess the implementation of legislation, post-implementation, and the mechanism for that, so that at this stage it's just in draft concept, whether that will be through the committee process or what process we would follow has been proposed, and that is as well will be taken forward as part of the work for the 7th Parliament. In the 4th quarter, we also were preparing for the audit for the year. The initial engagements with the AG had commenced, and the outcome subsequent. So the engagements were in the 4th quarter. It's now a couple of months later, and the audit outcome is out, and we have achieved a clean audit for the year. We've also we had completed an annual member survey. So this is a survey which we undertake annually. It's an APP target as well, but obviously operationally it's very important for us. There are a number of areas that we track to assess whether members are satisfied with the level of service that is being delivered in terms of a range of areas, from safety and security to procedural advice to research services, a whole package of services that we render as the administration. So all members were requested to complete the survey. And in the last year, we achieved an 84% overall satisfaction rating compared to the 80% which we had targeted for the term. So every year we kept it at 80%, and in all the years we were able to achieve above the 80%, all the years of the last term. We're now on to the program performance. So for the 4th quarter, in terms of the annual performance plan, we had 26 program performance indicators and targets for the year and 25 for the quarter, of which 22 were achieved, which is 88%, and 3 were not achieved. This just shows the distribution of performance by program. So you will see we have 4 budget programs, which we'll speak to later, but these are the 4 budget programs. Program 1, Governance, Leadership and Administration, Program 2, Parliamentary Support Services, Program 3, Public Engagement, and Program 4, Member Support. The areas of non-achievement or underachievement you will see in the red column, which were in Programs 1 and 2. The two areas where we did not achieve in Program 1, Governance, Leadership and Administration, were the targets we had set actually for the year, the percentage of planned APP program performance indicators achieved. So we had, for the 5-year term, every year set out to achieve 96% of our APP targets. In the year 23-24, we achieved 85%, which is an improvement on the previous year, which was about 81%. The other area which we did not achieve was the percentage of follow-up internal audit actions completed. Now, internal audit conducts audits of our internal control processes, and they typically focus on various areas within the operations of Parliament. In response to those audits, we then as management devise action plans that say how we will address the findings that they had raised. So in respect of all the findings that were raised, we had complied or met all of the actions that we'd committed to. However, there was one outstanding action which we could not finalize by the time of the certification that we had done so, which was to finalize a service level agreement with the South African Police Services. Under Program 2, the Parliamentary Support Services, the one target which was not achieved was compliance with the applicable regulations of the Critical Infrastructure Protection Act, or CIPA. Typically what happens also on an annual basis is there is an assessment done, because we are a national key point, there's an assessment done by the Provincial Key Point Office of the infrastructural conditions in the WCPP. They found us to be, in terms of the Act, compliant with the Act, except in respect of one aspect, which is the adequacy of the Joint Operations Centre. The Joint Operations Centre is basically it's a physical space, physical room, and the finding was that in the event of an emergency, where many stakeholders would need to be convened, this would be, for example, government departments, could be local government as well, where many stakeholders had to convene on the day, that space was not conducive for that kind of engagement. So this is where we fell short on this, and hence the audit concluded that we were non-compliant in that respect. So those are the areas of non-achievement. The rest is the detailed performance. I'll try to keep this high level because it's quite a lot of slides. Maybe just to indicate, so for Program 1, typically in Program 1, which is the governance and administrative program, we have quite a number of compliance-related indicators. So the first one is compliance by the Executive Authority with all the requirements of FAMPLA, which of course from a governance perspective is very critical for us to be able to perform on. We achieved 100% of that. Some of the things that are typically required in a quarter for the Executive Authority would be that he would have, as per legislated, tabled the required reports like the financial reports and the quarterly performance reports by the stipulated deadlines. There was also an engagement with the Minister of Finance, which is also a requirement, and this would have been for the next year's budget. The member satisfaction I just spoke to, which was achieved, again, compliance by the accounting officer, similar to the Executive Authority, legislative requirements, so we're happy to report 100% achievement or compliance with that. The next couple of indicators deal with our corporate strategies, major corporate strategies. The IT digitalization improvement strategy is basically one of our pillar strategies in relation to our modernization journey. And so what we had done is we established this, we put in place the strategy at the beginning of the 5-year term, and every year we would roll out another set, progressively roll out more initiatives that are IT related. And so what we're reporting here is that 100% of what we had planned for the year were indeed achieved by Q4, and you will see some examples of some of the activities that were undertaken in that regard. So technical support provided for the implementation of reverse billing. Reverse billing is a mechanism that we've introduced to allow the public to access the website for free, so with no charge to the user. procurement of tools of trade for members of the 7th Parliament, which was also in the plan, and then technical support for the development of our intranet. So those are just some of the activities. At some point, I'm sure we will have a broader discussion about our whole modernization program and agenda, especially as we go into our strategic planning shortly. And then for the other two strategies would be the HR strategy and the knowledge management strategic framework, which similarly had planned activities which were all completed as per the plan. Program 2, Parliamentary Support Services, what we also refer to as one of the core business programs. The target was that an annual digest of rulings would have been published. So this is basically just a record or compilation of all the rulings that were made in the course of the year. And we typically publish this. It's ATC'd and published. So this was done. This was done and published by the 4th quarter. The oversight and accountability model was also a target that I spoke to earlier in terms of the highlights. This was already reported. House resolutions tracked. So this is also something which we introduced last year as a formal practice, where this was achieved as per the plan. House papers, here we're talking about ATCs, order papers, minutes, question papers. All of those were electronically available as per the target, and this would have been either via the website or through email communication. Completion of the review of the rules, I also discussed that earlier, which has been completed. Draft committee reports produced. So this is an administrative target where the requirement is that all our reports meet a certain quality standard and are also produced within the timeframes, procedural timeframes and requirements in terms of the standard operating procedures for committees, and this was done. Committee decisions were tracked 100%, so those would be recommendations of a committee, resolutions of a committee, requests for information, and this was 100% done. Next program is public engagement, where under the sub-program stakeholder management, we had an indicator on the number of additional functionality published in order to enhance information offered to website users. So essentially what this is we have a website, but we on an ongoing basis attempt to improve the functionality of the website. So we introduce new features onto the website that make it more accessible for users, whether the public or members or even staff. And so we introduced a feature on which we call the news and media page, which was added, that obviously enhances the ability of users to access that kind of information. It also allows for media representatives to apply for accreditation, and that feature was not previously there, so that is the new functionality. And you will be seeing that we in the future will increase the extent to which all the enhancements that we bring about on the website. Year-on-year posts, increase in posts on identified official social media channels. So what we are doing here is we are measuring the extent to which we are able to increase our content that we put out on Twitter, or X now, and Facebook. So this is a measure of what we put out in terms of content. And in the 4th quarter, you will see there's quite a significant achievement of 146%. The reason is that in the last quarter and towards the late, well, as typically is the case towards the end of the term, there's a lot more legislation that gets processed. And so there was a lot of opportunity created through the lawmaking process to generate content that could then be posted on the various platforms. Percentage of planned interparliamentary engagement for members implemented. These would be engagements that members will have undertaken, and of the planned ones, 100% were achieved by the 4th quarter. The level of free public access to the website. This is the reverse billing I referred to earlier, where we are allowing for anybody, any user, to access the website free of charge. So the achievement here is 3 reports. Those reports report on the actual data usage. At the time, because this was early stages when we implemented, it's just a couple of months actually since we've implemented this aspect. The website's been there, but the functionality around making it freely accessible is quite a recent development in the last couple of months. And so we have reports of the usage, and I think we also obviously have been billed for the usage as well. So it's clear that there is utilization of this service. Number of public education initiatives implemented in accordance with the annual plan. So public education initiatives, and maybe the language, we just need to be sure of what we are talking about here. Public education initiatives would be, for example, workshops about the work of Parliament or about the work of legislatures, anything in the democratic space that is of value to the constituent that we are addressing. So if it's school children or the general public, but these are essentially workshops that are of an educational nature. And you will see there that we had quite a significant number more than what we planned to do on an annual basis. We typically do about, we plan for about 24, and we usually double that. But particularly in the last quarter, there was quite a high demand for more educational work to be done around particularly the electoral process. So we were able to partner with the IEC to help with our work in that regard. The number of strategic partnerships established. In the last year, we established one formal partnership with Africa Unite. Of course, we have relationships with very many organizations, but this is the one with which we established a formal agreement. Public engagement initiatives implemented. We have a program called WCPP Engage, which is our public outreach program, and it typically targets stakeholders in various parts of the province. In the fourth quarter, or by the fourth quarter, we had gone to Prince Albert in the Central Karoo district. So we'd only targeted for the fourth quarter one such outreach program, and hence we're only reporting one. But obviously in year, we would have done similar work. Percentage of planned activities completed as per the public engagement strategy. So these are other activities, and one of the key things we did in this year was, in that quarter, was to just tighten the internal mechanism administratively, the internal mechanisms we use to deliver public participation programs. So we have several units that are involved in putting together the public engagement work. What we did here was to establish this committee that would help to especially streamline the public participation processes around lawmaking. And this emanated, in addition to engagements that we've had internally, it was also prompted by the Mahale judgment, which I think members may be aware of, that also prompted legislatures and made certain pronouncements on the extent to which legislatures were being effective in facilitating public involvement in the work of Parliament. And member support. So this is the program that funds political parties and also members. It's also where we do a lot of the capacity building. The only indicator for the current year that we have here is around the training and development for members. And we have, so it says the four categories of training and development. So these would be formal training through higher education institutions. It would be short courses. It would be online training through academies like the CPA, and what's the information sessions as well. So these four categories, and by the fourth quarter, all the activities we'd planned in those categories we had successfully addressed. Chairperson, that concludes the non-financial performance report for quarter 4. Financial report. Shall we proceed with that?
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I don't know whether you would allow the members maybe just to first, whether they would desire to engage on this part before we get to the finances for the specific period, Chairperson.
Let's see if members have any questions. Okay, I see Member Barnes, and then Member Bryant.
I'd like to make a proposal, Chair. Can we finish and then ask?
Members, are you happy with us concluding the presentation and then move into questions? Okay. So we'll continue, Mr. Secretary.
The financial report would be done by the CFO and Mr. Javadin, Chairperson. Thank you.
Through your chair.
So I will be presenting the fourth quarter IYM or financial report, which is the expenditure as at the end of the financial year. So basically the total expenditure versus the budget as at the end of March 2024. As at the end of the financial year, our total adjusted budget of 241,105,000, we spent an amount of 227,662,000, and that's an effective spend of 94.44% of our budget. That includes the direct charge, though, which is the member salaries which is paid from the Provincial Revenue Fund, and that effectively comes to the fact that of our voted funds, we had a underspending of about 5.7 million of our total budget, adjusted budget. And the main reason for that underspending, members, is basically the fact that we had some vacancies during the year. There were some once-off projects that were not finalized by the end of the financial year, which has been carried over into the current financial year. However, due to the specific underspending and the allowance of FAMPLA, the Speaker has approved that the underspending has been rolled over into the current financial year and the MTF for utilization for spending on specific projects in WCPP. Just with the fourth quarter reporting per program, on program 1, we spent 93.44% of our budget. The main reason for the underspend there is mainly underspending on vacant posts, as well as I mentioned previously, once-off projects which were planned during the financial year which were not finalized, however, are planned or have been completed in the current financial year. With regards to program 2, we have a spend of 102.58% there, which is an overspend on the budget. And the main reason for that is in standing committees where there was a huge influx of additional bills and expenditure on bills that came through in the fourth quarter of 23-24. However, that particular overspend was absorbed into the savings we did have, and environment was approved to move funds from program 1 to program 2 for that particular purpose. Then with regards to program 3, we spend 97.84% of the budget there, so we are more or less on track with regards to that. Main reason for a short slight underspend in that program is for basically a minor expenditure within the what I call it cell phone allowance, as well as a vacant post. With regards to program 4, which is member support, we had a 98.86% spend there. And just to highlight the two main, if I call it slow expenditure, is the allowance and contributions. And that is mainly due to the members' enabling allowance, which is demand-driven and paid upon claims received from members. And then lastly, through your chair, program 5, which is the direct charge of member salaries, there's an 85.3% spend on that. And the main reason for that spend only being 85% is due to the fact that the member salary increases was only approved in the current 24-25 financial year. So that expenditure and payments already came into effect in the current financial year. However, it is budgeted for in every financial year. So we do make provision for an increase every year. And that's the reason why in the 23-24 financial year, we didn't spend the full amount, because the member salary increases and back paid was paid in the current financial year. And Chair, that's basically in short a summary of the fourth quarter financial report and expenditure.
Thank you very much, colleagues. So now we'll take questions on both the financial reporting as well as the non-financial performance. And then after that, we'll go on to the APP. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, so I've seen Member Bryant, Member Barnes, Member Masipa, and then Boyson. Sorry.
Thanks very much, Chairperson. Just Chairperson, before I start, it's something that I've picked up with a couple of the committees up until now, is that our presentations in the chamber are displayed very, very small. And even though we do sometimes get these presentations beforehand and in good time, it's difficult in the chamber to actually see what's going on unless one, turns one's head around. So if we can try find a way to make them full screen, or at least increase the size of the font going forward, it would be incredibly helpful with following, especially financial reports. Chair, I've only really got one question, and it's in terms of the first presentation. The strategic partnerships that you spoke about, how many of these strategic partnerships do we currently have? And are there any costs or stipends involved in being a part of those? And then just furthermore, who decides on those strategic partnerships, evaluates them, and do they ever come to committees for any form of ratification? Thanks.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, let me start by welcoming both presentations and also say they are very much explanatory. The questions that I have prepared to ask were responded to while I was listening. On the last one, on the quarterly expenditure, though, I'm not clear. If I look under sub-program 2, Hansard Services is the only program that is not optimally used, that is a little bit over 50% being used. What could be the reasons for that? If I can get an explanation on that one. And as for the rest, where there's overspend, for example, on parliamentary support services, and the rest, I think I got an explanation on the committees, on the how can I forget the name now? I got some assistance there, on the right wording, what to say. The public hearings that we were having. Yeah, the public hearings, I think that's where the money went to. That's what the explanation I got in the meantime. And then on the first presentation, Chair, I think it's on slide 6. I just want to be clarified on 1 or 2 issues. If there are any matters that are outstanding with the 6th and 7th parliamentary transition that was happening, is there any matter that one from this side should be knowing that this is outstanding, it still needs to be done outside the review of rules? I understood that there was an item that was saying that rules needs to be reviewed, but generally, are there any outstanding things as this committee that we need to know about? I think the last one, Chair, would be on, I missed the number of the slide where I saw it. It's on public education programs, I think that we normally have as Parliament. I think being a member in the past in the House, I think some of us had the opportunity to bring from our people in our constituencies to Parliament, where I was then my constituency was Beaufort West, residing in Maritzburg. I think I was one of those members that had a hard time and a tough time to bring my people here. And many a times when I would ask, it would be because of budgetary constraints, it's far. Now, I don't think I want to put it as a question. Rather, I would want to put it as a request to the 7th Parliament in saying it might not be Member Barnes, it might be another member in the 7th Parliament. Can we look at ensuring that when you are in the Western Cape and programs are happening, it should not be that member Van Vogel is in Swellendam, therefore it's closer. She can come and bring people to Parliament. The consistency should be there, that the access should be there for everyone, and the budget should speak equally so to everyone. I think I just wanted to make that input for now. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Member Masipa.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to the presenters. Chair, I've got couple of questions, but the first question is regarding the direct charges. Can you maybe just provide clarity with regards to what these direct charges are for? I noted that you talked about the findings with regards to emergency evacuation plans and so forth. Myself and Mem Bombo were walking out of the garage and we spoke about the challenges with regards to if there is riots or protests, how do we really exit or how do we enter the building? I think that's probably one of the areas that you could just highlight us there. The other point that I wanted to make is I know that there has been a talk about financial constraints in terms of really the budget allocation to the Parliament. But I'm seeing something that really also worries me a little bit with regards to your presentation. Your presentation gave an impression that the targets that we aim to achieve, we have achieved 100%. At the same time, then the figures that are presented here, they say we underspent. So that for me maybe says to this provincial parliament is okay. We've got enough money and we even underspent, Maybe, if you can talk to it to say, how then do we really finding ourselves that we are really under budgeted or, we're not really getting the funding that we require. That's all from my side, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Member Boyson.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, mine is regarding the AG and auditing cost, Chairperson. Where I come from, we always had a headache regarding auditing cost, and we had the feeling that it's regardless of the size of the municipalities. It's just you're going to be billed whether you can afford it or not. My question on that would probably then also relate to at the provincial level. There's a big debate coming up in terms of the unfairness of equitable share. Provinces are not the same size, so I don't know what the auditing costs are at the provincial level. Is it also a headache based on the size of the provinces? Now, my question, Chairperson, is that the rules of engagements for the AG and their framework on how they operate, are those rules set at this level or at a national level? And if they are at a national level, surely we should then come up with petitioning, or come up with suggestions in terms of how auditing cost can be determined, because as I was saying, for me, it's not a fair share of the billing. Some of us can't afford it. And if it's at this level, then surely I would propose that is something that we should really look into, so that the charges of the AG should be a fair reflection based on the income of rates and taxes and probably the size of governments of the different spheres. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor Mpombo.
Thank you, Chair. I think firstly, I just want to thank for the presentations, but also probably to acknowledge, because as you know, I'm coming from the other arm, other wing, the legislation, the government, and so coming from the government. So I was where, specifically in my previous department, I'll know things work. They really work. Like whatever information you need, someone will be able to share the information. So when I started here, though I've been member of parliament since 2014, but I've never been so much in engagement except just to be sitting there. So I just want to thank you and acknowledge that the way how I ended up finding things here, they work. No, they really work. You go to the library, you ask for the information, they'll give you the public education, the IT, everything. Like within few days, it was about, I feel at home. So I really want to acknowledge and thank the staff for that. But now going to the public education, one of my pet kind of projects, as we always talk about, nothing about us without us. How do you, like when I read it, and also the presentation, it was more like during the time of the elections related to the IEC and also public education related to the social media, and then I'm looking at you, and the websites and all of those. But also, it's supposed also to be part of when there's a legislation or there are public hearings related to the bills and so forth. But at what also extent in terms of making the public aware in regard to what the parliament does beyond what I've just mentioned? Just to make an example, with a Women's Month, do we as members make suggestions where, for example, like my constituency is in George, at what extent that instead of me doing it as a political party, but it's about I'm bringing parliament there in regard to the issues related to the public education, like even the legislations that you are doing, and also in terms of how we, as this House, make the government account. Like, for example, like that. Lastly, like now we will be having a speakers debate, and there might be other speakers debates that are coming, whether it's a heritage, whether it's the youth. At what extent that it doesn't only limit here, because on the 29th we'll be all be talking, but Auntie Sarah doesn't know what we're talking about. They don't have an access. At what extent that before or even after or during this process, that the Tanisaras from the Mauriceburg and whatever understands that we're having now, as a parliament, taking the issues of women forward, we'll be having this engagement, but also feel it. We are parliament. We are here in Neveras. We're talking about those issues. So how can we be able to assist in terms of us as the members to assist you or assist us in regard to the public education so that Parliament doesn't leave anyone behind? Thanks.
Thank you very much. And the last question for that round is Member Peters.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, what is the progress report on the Joint Operations Centre and who is responsible for it?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
I want to know what is the progress report on the Joint Operations Centre and who is responsible for that progress report? Page 13.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm not going to answer that, but I'm going to hand over to the team on this side.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to ask that through the Secretary, the various managers take responsibility for their parts of the question. But I think, Chair, it would be remiss of me not to speak to what Professor Mbombo just raised, because I think it's very, very important, especially with public education and outreach in the current landscape of where we find not only as a province, but also as a country. And as part of our strategic objectives, building a credible Western Cape moving forward, that kind of engagement and taking Parliament to the communities is one of those things that we will focus on over the next 5 years. I'm not saying that it hasn't happened, because it has happened. But what members also please and need to take into account, if you look at in the Blue Book, the amount of funding in particular that space, public education and outreach, based on the fiscal environment that we deal with, but also with regards to the allocation that Parliament gets out of the biggest share of the budget. I think Sunal can give the correct figures, but it's for actual operational implementation in that public education and outreach space, it's very, very limited. We also have in that unit only six staff members that needs to serve 7.2 million citizens in this province. So when we are not able to get to a community, we tend to lean on the members to try and assist us to try and create to narrow that gap in our pursuit to get Parliament to the people. The Deputy Speaker and myself have also had a few discussions on this, because we, as the custodians of this institution, will now assist public education and outreach to also try and absorb some of that pressure so that we can try and touch every single community over the next 5 years. But I think I take your point. It's very, very important. I mean, I'm a firm believer that we can all say all these nice things, and in particular during Women's Month, you'll see everyone saying a whole lot of nice things. Everyone is women and feminists, but that's where it ends. And so we must never get to that point. I also don't want to take the thunder of Sunal and a team, but I'm sure in her response she'll also speak about our engagement with small, medium enterprises that we've had, the engagement with the dialogues that the institution initiated and what we have already done, which I'm one of those engagements, the power of speech, which is I'm very, very proud of, which is the first of such engagement in Africa. Tomorrow, for example, we're having a strategic session with stakeholders, with outside stakeholders, to try and get their view on their perception on how they see Parliament or the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, and link that back into the strategic plans going forward. So it's nothing with us, without us. But yeah, I'm sure between Sunal and the Secretary, they'll add to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to the members for the questions. So maybe before I respond to some of the questions, Ms. Fouchier will respond to the matters related to public engagement. And maybe she could also then add a bit of content to our sector parliaments. What's the idea going forward, especially with the idea that we have with Youth Parliament. Also our stakeholder database, and also the intended public engagement program for the 2024-2025 financial year, and our members could also input into those initiatives. Mr. Stimele will speak to the matters of parliamentary support services, Mr. Titus with regards to the matters of access and egress, and then also the finance team with regards to the question on the AG, but also the direct charges. So maybe just my inputs first. So the Western Cape Provincial Parliament is, although we have 7.4, well, it might have increased by now, 7.4 million citizens in the Western Cape, and only 42 members. We are one of the smallest in number parliaments in terms of the number of members, with probably the third biggest citizenry if we look at the country as a whole. Yet we also have one of the smallest budgets. But we do what we must do and what we can do with both our human resources, which is about 103, also in terms of headcount, the smallest number of people doing exactly the same work that must happen in other provincial legislatures, with a budget of, 203 million, I think it was in the last financial year. In order for us to deliver on what we need to deliver, we have to be a bit innovative. So for the members, the new members in the Western Cape, we always strive to be the first in what we do. COVID and how we responded to COVID for business continuity was one of that. Our public engagement strategy also looks, and our oversight and accountability model also looks towards achieving that. Sunel, maybe also in the social media, our social media advertising and engagements and those type of things, you can also speak to that. Just with regards to some of the questions directly, we overspend on parliamentary support services. In the Blue Book, members would see that we had initially budgeted 2.6 million. We had then pushed it up to just over, I think, 3.5 million, because members would understand that in the last year of a parliamentary term, especially for provincial legislatures, there's quite a bit of legislation that comes through, either the provincial legislation or legislation that comes from the NCOP. So that then has a knock-on effect in terms of the legislative process in the legislature specifically. It's public participation, it's public hearings, it's all of those things. And in the last year, it's a bit lopsided because more of that work happens. We had then provided an additional funding for the lawmaking process in the last financial year, specifically having at the back of our mind understanding that legislation is going to come in the last year of the parliamentary term. We had then made a conscious decision going forward that to up that amount for committees, because that's where the work actually happens as part of the core business, and we have a benchmark that we would not want to go beyond, but to seek to increase that every year depending on the funding that comes our way, so that we can enable committees more for them to do their work, lawmaking, oversight and public participation, because there are obviously costs involved in that specific area. The overspend on public participation, I think Mr. Jawadin had responded to an extent in terms of that. It was mainly because of the last year of a parliamentary term. Public participation goes up because of the lawmaking process and obviously the lawmaking process itself. With regards to the question from Honourable Buns in terms of the the 7th parliamentary term, the transition, I think there are a few matters that's still outstanding. One of the matters we've provided political parties and members with office accommodation, with tools to the best of our ability based on what is available. We had an induction program in that first week. We intended to have an orientation program. We're still hoping to have some of that because that's the bit more nitty-gritty on some of the work. For example, workshopping the rules, looking at interparliamentary engagements, what are the requirements. Dirko was also intended to do a specific workshop on that in terms of what the expectations would be and so on and so forth. If we move to Honourable Masipa, the question on direct charges, the colleagues from finance will be attending to that, but the challenges with entering and exiting the building, it's not a matter that's been coming on since the 7th parliamentary term. I think members have continuously requested the administration to look at what are the options, to such an extent that we had engaged the Department of Infrastructure, because remember they are responsible for the buildings. We had come to a meeting of the minds in terms of what could be the possible options to attend to that, so that members don't have to exit the garage in order to come into the building again. So it's basically going up the ramp, going around there, and then coming in through the doors. We have, I think, Mr. Titus, it's in the last 2 weeks, we've had further written engagements where the Department of Infrastructure now desires to formalize proposals. So that we can then see which of the two proposals we would be amenable to accepting as an alternative to what the current arrangement is, because members don't necessarily work the 8 to 4. There might be after hours, even over weekends. Members might have engagements, and then there's a bit of a challenge with entering and or exiting because of the current way in which the process works. So we have engaged DOI. We're just waiting for them to formalize the process. The process will be formalized through the DG's office, the DG of the province, and then also with the Secretary's office. And we'll engage the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker on those proposals once we receive that. We had, in our discussion, they had verbalized what those proposals could be, so we have a rough idea. We're just waiting for it to be formalized in terms of how that could be happening. Targets achieved as opposed to the underspend. So if we look at the detail in terms of the underspend, we'll see that some of those details speaks to vacancies. Compensation of employees as it relates to vacancies. It's also with the issue of direct charges, but Mr. Jawadin, when he speaks to that. So the benchmark in government departments in terms of vacancies is 10% and below. In the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, we've always strived and we've achieved to get below that. But vacancies in any organization is something that's outside of the control of the organization. Because if somebody exits the organization for whatever reason, there's an opportunity somewhere else, the person retires, or heaven forbid the person passes on, that's not necessarily something the organization could control. What we could work to is getting those positions filled within the shortest possible time. But if the standard is 3 to 4 months, you've already created a underspend or a saving while the position is vacant. When people also move from one post to the next post, so let's say it's a promotion, the one vacancy is filled, but it then creates another vacancy below that. And that is also part of the underspend in terms of the vacancies. Mr. Titus can maybe give an indication of a few posts, because we've signed off on a few posts. On the 1st of August, we had 2 new entries into the organization in terms of vacancies that have been existing up to then. So there's work being done in terms of the recruitment and selection process. Honourable Boyson, with regards to the question on the cost of the AG. In the 2023-2024 financial year, we've actually done a bit more with regards to the costing of the AG service than what we would have done in any other year. And when I say more, there was actually a bit more scrutiny. And when I say a bit more scrutiny, as the accounting officer, I had requested, please tell me, what is the resources that you will be using for the audit? What is it costing us in terms of hours that those resources will be used and the cost for those hours? And then compare that to the previous financial year so that we can see. And I'm quite comfortable that what the AG had charged us based on the information that they have provided was reasonable and acceptable in terms of this specifically. I don't know if the CFO, maybe Ms. Nikela would want to add to that when they do get an opportunity. Thank you, Honourable Mbombo, for the acknowledgement of the hard work. Like I said, we try to do our best with the limited resources, both finances and people. And we may not always get it right, but we're always striving to do more. Maybe just the last question, Honourable Petrus, on the JOC. So the assessment of our compliance on the SEPA Act has various categories. One of those is the Joint Operations Center. Okay, our Joint Operations Center, if we go out just on the other side of the wall, there where the picture is hanging, is where we've put in place a Joint Operations Center. I think it's been up and running for about 2 years, year and a half, 2 years now. The assessment by the NKP commander looks at the physical space and the tools that are available. Our view is that since COVID, we've transitioned into a purely in-person environment, into a virtual environment and a hybrid environment. And the assessment of the JOC commander or the NKP commander might not have taken into account that transition. Because if there's an incident and the JOC needs to be activated, it doesn't mean that all 20 people needs to be in there. Others could sit and virtually connect to the JOC and then give their input and those type of things. We've continued to engage the NKP commander on our position in terms of taking into account the hybrid and the virtual environment also. We'll only find out whether that position of ours has landed somewhere when the next assessment gets done towards the end of this year. Okay, but Mr. Titus and maybe Mr. Doman, if he's here, could maybe just add to that too. Those would be my initial responses. I'm going to ask whether we can move down here and then at the back in terms of the other responses, starting with the CFO and Mr. Jawadin. Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, members.
Through you, Chair, if I can maybe just answer the question regarding the direct charges. The direct charges is a separate program specifically where the member salaries are budgeted from. So member salaries are paid out of a separate program, which is a funding that comes from the Provincial Revenue Fund and not part of the equitable share specifically. So what the direct charges specifically is purely the budgeted funds for member salaries. Thank you, Chair.
Through you, Chair, just to add to the AG response of the Secretary, the fees and the rates are determined at a national level. But what is within our control, as the Secretary indicated, we do manage it, we check it. From our side, we do respond as quickly as possible, so we never cause any delays. But provincially also, at Provincial Treasury, they do look at what the AG fees are in the province, and they do communicate with the AG in terms of that, but the actual rates are set at a national level.
Chair, perhaps just to respond to or to add to some of the questions that the Secretary had responded to. Nothing to add regarding the JOC or the Joint Operating or Operations Centre. I think the Secretary has adequately responded to that. The same around the issue of egress and access control, that has been covered. But just a comment on the vacancies. As you know, Chair, recruitment is kind of a roving target. As we fall, other positions become available. Some people within the organization get promoted and create other vacancies within the organization, etc. Just to say that when it comes to our recruitment processes, and the current vacancy rate within the WCPP less than 10%, which is not a bad showing at this point. We've had 2 recruitment appointments, as the Secretary had indicated recently. There are a number of other posts in process already. I'm not going to be disclosing all of the details of that because those have not been concluded and offers may not have been made. So it is an ongoing process. I think what does become important is that when we are making the appointments, that we are able to provide the necessary support for people to assimilate and integrate within the organization. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, on the issue of Hansard and the perpetual under expenditure, I want firstly to say the under expenditure will always be driven under Hansard by the demand, the number of sittings that we have per year. And in terms of the budgeting for Hansard, we always have to rely as to what has been the contract amount per year that we've agreed on. So then we say, let's rather have the contract amount than having a lesser amount, although throughout the year, then during the IYMs, we'll always adjust what we have on Hansard so that we can bring it to the core business, which is part of committee work, so that we can be able to augment that particular part whenever there is, or when the projection shows that there will be a huge under expenditure in that particular aspect. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair and members. We're very passionate about public engagement, so we always get very excited when we get to speak about it. I'm going to talk a bit broader on some of the questions that were asked, and then I'm going to refer 1 or 2 specific questions to Mr. Thembaletu Keswa, who is the Manager of Public Education and Outreach, and Mr. James Retief, who is the Manager of Stakeholder Management and Communication Services. In terms of the public engagement that we do at WCPP, we essentially stand on 5 legs, and it's 5 very different streams of work that we do. The first one, and that is the most traditional one that started after Democratic South Africa was founded in 1994, is public education workshops. And at that point, it was very important to teach our communities about participating in a democratic society, because majority of our population has been excluded from a democratic process for their entire life. So for a long, long time, we focused very much on public education. We still do, but to a much lesser amount. Our target is to have 25 public education and outreach workshops throughout the Western Cape in any given 12-month period. So it's about 2 on average public education workshops that we do per month. We do it on a rotation system so that in a 5-year parliamentary term, we reach the entire Western Cape. We might only be able to reach Merweville once in 5 years, but we aim to at least get there. We also have a digital advancement, which I will get to later, that will enable us to keep our presence there alive, even though we are not physically there. So that's public education. That's teaching people about the Constitution, about how Parliament works, how Parliament's elected and constituted, what Parliament does, and how people can participate in the work of Parliament. It goes through various phases, from foundation phase, because it also links up to the life orientation curriculum in the Department of Education. So it's from foundation phase, which is from early childhood development, primary schools, right through to adults. And we have different material that we use in those different phases. The second leg is public engagement, and that is something that we have started to move to very much at the end of the 5th and the beginning of the 6th Parliament, which is less about education, but more about meaningful engagement, a deepening democracy through discussion, accountability, feedback to communities, and really connecting the members of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament with the communities of the Western Cape. It's the program that we call as WCPP Engage, and we will in a 5-year period move to every single district in the Western Cape. We already concluded such a cycle in the 6th Parliament, and we will start with that in the 7th Parliament. We were supposed to have one in Citrusdal in July, but due to the floods and the inaccessibility and the risks to both our members and members of the communities, we had to postpone it. Hopefully we will still be able to do it in this quarter. All the details of these programs, both the education and the engagements, get sent to Programming Authority every month in the beginning of the month, so that it's put on the parliamentary program. We will also, however, send it to every individual member, so that members are aware of where we go and who comes here, so that if there's an area where you have a specific interest in, or it's your constituency area, you want to be there and you want to participate, members are always very, very, very welcome. Then the third stream that we have is focused civil society engagements. That is your old sectoral parliaments. Historically, we've always had a women's parliament once a year. We had a youth parliament once a year. But we decided also in the 6th Parliament to expand the scope. We had a youth parliament, we had a women's parliament, we even had a women's parliament where we collaborated with the Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians, where it was international participants that we had as part of this women's program. But we also found that the scope and the need for such engagements is a lot broader than just the historical women and children. So we decided it would be more affordable, more accessible if we do it virtually. So we had a virtual roundtable discussion on people with disabilities with stakeholders across the province. The focus at that point was mobility, because that's the beauty of it. When we did the WCPP Engage through the province, we pick up on certain recurring themes throughout the province. And the feeling left out by people with disabilities, especially outside of the metro, with regards to mobility, was something that we got over and over and over again. So we set up this roundtable. We had the relevant ministers there, the relevant chairpersons there, the departments were there to present. So that's an effort to bring these stakeholders to the members and to craft a solution together. We also had something that we picked up throughout the province is small, medium and micro enterprises, especially after COVID. Biggest driver of employment in the province, specifically hospitality, etc. And with both the energy crisis and COVID, these people were desperate to be heard. So we also set up a roundtable discussion for small, medium and micro enterprises. And what we do with these engagement, both WCPP Engage and the focused civil society engagements, is we make a note of all the recommendations that come out from those discussions, and we publish it in the WCPP's ATC. So we try to feed that back into the work of WCPP so that the relevant chairpersons, the relevant interested members, people whose constituency areas these come from, can follow that up with questions to the minister and follow it up with the committees in terms of oversight. Then, in terms of public hearings, when legislation comes through, we are on the early bird system with both the NCOP and the Provincial Legal Forum, where we are informed of bills coming before it arrives here. So when a bill is on its way, we can already assess to see this is a technical bill, so we're going to look for experts in the field that would be interested in making submissions, or it is a bill of general public interests, such as the NHI bill or the Bela bill, and we would then, from public engagement side, look for stakeholders that we know in the province. We also liaise with departments to make sure that we get from them as well. And we then arrange for the stakeholders to attend public hearings or to make submissions with regards to public hearings. Then I think both Member Barnes and Member Mbombo raised the issue of programs for members. We provide 2 programs per member per year that we can either do in the member's constituency or we can do at WCPP, where we avail our resources. It's not linked to a political party. It's not linked necessarily to a particular member, but we will run a Western Cape Provincial Parliament program for the members. It can also be in support of a commemorative day, be it Human's Right or Women's Day or whatever. So we do 2 per member per year, and members, some members access it and some members choose not to, but it is available there. So those are the 5 key things that we do in terms of, I'm getting there. What we're doing in terms of public engagement. One thing that we are looking at, and we've got a twinning agreement or a memorandum of interest with the Bavarian Parliament and the Welsh Parliament, but with the Welsh Parliament in particular, they have a very well-functioning elected youth parliament. And it's also an attempt to grow youth interest in politics, but also skills and awareness and activism. And that is something that we are looking at. We've got a concept document, but we're still in discussion. Finances are, as you can imagine, always a big problem for us, and that's where, Member Bryant, I'm going to ask Themba to speak about the strategic partnerships. Department of Local Government is one of our strategic partners that assists us a great deal in leveraging of their structures, because we are only 6 people. So we will keep you updated with the plan with the elected Western Cape Youth Parliament. Then we established in the beginning of the 6th Parliament an electronic stakeholder database. We gathered from all members, and I open this invitation again to all members. If you have stakeholders, please forward them to me, and we upload them on the stakeholder database with their area, their contact numbers, and their field of interest. Every WCPP event we have, we take all the attendees, we load them, we brief them on POPI, but we load them up on the stakeholder database, and it's accessible to all members on the intranet. So if you want to know the education stakeholders in Overberg, you can click on it and it will give you a list of all the stakeholders interested in education in Overberg, in the West Coast, etc. And that's mostly what we use when we look for people to attend public hearings as well. But please help us to grow that database as well. If you want to, people who have new constituencies, for instance, you're more than welcome to reach out to us and say, who's the stakeholders you have on the database in my constituency area. We are also looking at developing an online engagement platform. We are looking to do that with a new website where your constituents can communicate with you directly about issues that's challenging in their areas. Similarly, we can poll people, we can ask people for input and submissions. So that is part of the modernization process that we have. In the past, we did not have a lot of members' participation in setting up the program, but we are looking at doing so in this parliamentary term. We already had discussions with the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker. We spoke about the public education program for this financial year. Regrettably, we had to finalize that before the elections in the previous financial year. So for this year, there might not be as much room to maneuver as in the next financial year, but we very much want to involve members, and that would mean collaborating with members in setting up the plan as well. So that really is our plan going forward, and we really welcome any inputs and participation from members. I'm going to ask Themba to speak about our strategic partnerships. We try to enter into at least one a year. So Themba will just indicate which ones we have already. And then I'm going to ask Mr. Retief to speak about social media and social media expansion of the footprint. streaming on the website and social media advertising as well. Thank you. Mr. Keswa?
Thank you so much, Ms. Fouchier. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Thank you so much, Ms. Fouchier. So far, then, we've got 4 strategic partnerships that we have. And all of these partnerships promote democracy. That's the main thing that we look out when we go out for a partner. They promote democracy, but also they help to assist in extending the footprint of the WCPP, because you cannot reach the whole province. It is vast. So the first partner that we have, we've got a partnership with the Africa Unite, an organization that promotes democracy here all over the country in South Africa. Also with MOT SA, which is an organization that deals with the youth, capacitates the youth to reach their full potential. We also have the CGE, the Commission for Gender Equality, which we work with a lot, especially at this time, Member Mbombo, when we deal with gender issues in August and other months. And then the last one that we have is the Department of Local Government, which we have via the Community Development Worker, the CTWs. This one works a lot when it comes to public hearings, for example, because they are the people on the ground who assist us to ensure that participants do attend and make inputs. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Keswa. We also signed a partnership agreement with UWC, where we work together with them and them with us in terms of us doing guest lectures there, and they sending people to do internships, etc. on our side. We have a working arrangement with CPUT and with University of Stellenbosch and False Bay College, I think, as well, but that's not formal signed agreements. Just one thing that I neglected before I hand over to Mr. Retief. One of the things that we have done in order to extend our presence, especially in the regions, is during COVID time, we got a film company to actually film a public education workshop with our staff. So when we go and we do a public education workshop in Vredendal, we can leave them with a USB stick and say, at least once a year, show this to your grade 12s or your grade 11s, etc. We also on that, and I think every member got that USB credit card, also has our corporate video. So we give these to stakeholders and we leave it behind so that they have the material so that they can reuse it without us having to be physically present there, although that's obviously first prize. Thank you, Mr. Retief.
Thank you. In terms of social media, we are active on X, formerly known as Twitter, Facebook, and then we have an Instagram feed, and we're also quite active on YouTube. All of our sittings of the House and of committees are live streamed, and that live stream is also embedded in our website. Sunel made mention of the educational videos and the workshop. Those are also available under educational resources on our YouTube channel. In terms of social media advertising, this is something that we started, I think, about a year ago, and we've had very good results with it, particularly at the end of the last term. The very contentious bills that this Parliament was dealing with, we advertised those, and for not a lot of money, you get an incredibly wide reach. So we encourage chairpersons to make use of the facility. There is quite a simple process that you need to go through. The procedural officers that support the standing committees have been trained in how that process works, so they will be able to assist the chairpersons. We then get the request and we process it further. We are in the process of finalizing the recruitment of a multimedia officer. So things in our section are going to change a little bit, and we are then also going to start investigating the possibility of expanding our social media footprint to include video sites like TikTok, because that seems to be where things are going. And with X, I don't know how long X is going to be around still, or have any people using it. But I think that TikTok is where we need to go. But our MMO will have the skills and so on to be able to put that kind of content together. And if that all pans out, we will also be engaging with members to participate in putting that content together. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think that concludes our responses for now.
Thank you very much, members. I'm just looking for the next round of questions. I saw Member Masipa, Member Bryant, Member Mpombo.
Honorable Chair, thank you very much. Chair, I think I just want to maybe try and put my question, or maybe just clarify what I was referring to. I heard the Secretary was trying to answer, but did not answer my question. I think we've got a target which is 100% met, which is fine. You got to meet your target. But we also have got budgetary constraints that we are saying we've got budget, but we have been working below the budget. But I think the question for me is that how then do you present yourself to be, needing more funding if your targets, are not talking to the amount of, funding resources that you are looking for? You are able to achieve your target, so which means, the funding is over-sufficient, if I have to put it that way. So I think that's maybe, the point that I just want to get clarity to say. When you do the targets, are you just doing the targets to, in relation to resources that you have got? Or do you do the targets that cover the whole, what you need to really achieve, and say, this is what realistically what I need to achieve. However, because of my resources, then I'm going to limit myself to this target. But I think then what it does is that it makes our communication maybe a little bit harder, because then we are not able to really substantiate it from numbers point of view. So I think maybe, that's the area that you need to work on, to say, how do we communicate what is realistic and what are we working with in terms of the current targets? And I think, I hope I'm clear, Chair. Thank you.
1 minute. Bryant, then Mpombo, and then Member Jacobs.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thanks for the response on the strategic partnerships. Chair, can I make a proposal that we request a presentation on the strategic partnerships, what all of them involve, and what any of the potential costs therein are, for one of our upcoming meetings, preferably our next one if possible. Thank you, Chair.
Member Mbombo.
Thank you. Since you mentioned I think it follows up with a member, Brian was just indicating in terms of the stakeholders. You also mentioned like the UWC. At what extent now you also work with other legislatures across the other 8? What programs where you'll find that they dovetail and then you work closely? I recall in my previous life, not the 10 years ago and the other one, I used to do a lot of workshops for the Eastern Cape legislature in regard to health access and all of those. But also in regard to, because I'm aware that we mentioned Commonwealth, but also there's the Africa upcoming one. At what extent you are working also with the Africa one? And then lastly, I'm also interested in the research. I'm not sure if you have a research unit or something like that. Exactly what does it entail? How we can be able to make use of it? I'm aware of the library and all the apps, the access around that, but for the research. And then the very last, Chair, I'm not going to ask any questions anymore. I'm just coming from UK, where I was observing international elections, but I also engaged with some of the parliamentarians before they have their, after they win, I mean, prior the elections, before the new term for the new party that won. And then after that, I went to the European Parliament. But I was engaging more with the women parliamentarians from 27 countries, but the UK is no longer part of that. The point that I'm trying to highlight is about part of the good practices that I saw that probably I want to ask if, at what extent, because you mentioned Bavarian and Welsh, whether you do have an appetite also to engage it further with the others of the other parliament, not only the legislatures, but others where you may want to explore. Of course, you'll have to see in terms of what's the benefits and also the resources. But most of them anyway, they may fund some of those beyond the Commonwealth and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Member Jacobs.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the wonderful work that you are doing. With regards to the public engagements, we know that the Western Cape is huge, but the vast majority of the population is within the Cape Metro. So I want to know, with regards to the public participation hearings that you guys had, how many was done on the Cape Flats?
Thank you very much. Member Boyson, did you have a question? Thank you very much. I just wanted to ask, in terms of the strategic partnerships and the stakeholders, is the Western Cape Commissioner for Children one of those partnerships? And then I'll hand over to you for responses.
Chairperson and honourable members, again, thank you for the questions. I think most of the questions, again, sits with Ms. Forshia, but Mr. Titus and Mr. Babu will also attend to, especially the one on the research. But again, Speaker, maybe just Honourable Masipa, thank you for your clarification in terms of that. Maybe just in the CFO and Mr. Javudin and Madam Goldstone would also add if they desire necessary. So when we start with the planning process, so let's say in the current financial year, we're starting with 2025, 2026. We always anticipate that at the 1st of April 2025, all of our vacancies could be filled. So in terms of FAMPLA, we then need to make provision for all of those vacancies for the entire financial year. We then always also look at what are our long-term commitments. So it's the computer equipment, it's the leases that we have for copiers, etc., and then we have to make provision for that. We then also look at what are the programs that we would like to put in place. So let's look at the modernization program for the WCPP. There's the intention that the chamber, the committee rooms and other venues will be upgraded because the technology currently being used is quite dated, and we need to also manage the risk of the technology becoming outdated and then there's no replacements other than actually replacing the entire system. So we would then in that planning process seek to budget for that also in a next financial year. Some of the matters that we budget for obviously have to go through the procurement process, and that procurement process then takes a bit of time and is also dependent on the responses to that. So let's say we're planning for the entire 2025, 2026 financial year. All of our vacancies would be filled, all of our positions would be filled, all of our commitments would be covered, and the projects and recruitment process, procurement processes would then be followed so that we can spend all of the money that we would be allocated in that specific financial year. If staff members exit the organization, that plan is already on its way to creating a underspend or a saving. If a recruitment process or if a procurement process does not yield the desired outcome, like on the 1st of April, we have a service provider that's ready to run or no service provider responds, that then adds another complication already to our spend in the next financial year. So when we budget and when we plan, we already know, because remember Treasury in the allocation letter, they give us indicative allocations for the next year over the MTF period. So it's for year 2 and year 3. We already plan with that in mind, okay? But we can do so much more. So Ms. Forshia had earlier indicated, and I think it was in the presentation that Ms. Goldstone had indicated, that our target is but 24 or 25 for the education workshops. Like Honorable Jacobs had said, the province is wide. If we had all the resources that we could have in terms of people, more people other than just the 6 people that we have in that area, and more money for programmatic work, we could do far more than 24. Okay? When we put our ask on the table, we are always also cognizant that in the current system where we get our budget, we are but one program in the total budget for the province itself. Okay, and therefore our ask also needs to take that into account. So if we currently have 203 million as a budget, and we're asking for 290 million, the 87 million additional is going to have to come from within the budget itself, for the province itself. Okay, we are always cognizant that there might be other pressures on the provincial budget, but if we were to be given an opportunity to make a case that in the ideal world, how many public participation workshops would you want to have? If members need to extend the work that members need to do, what is the additional support that we'll be getting or that we would be providing to members? What are the additional programmatic work, both in parliamentary support services and in public engagement part, but also in the enabling environment, whether it be IT or other accommodation and those type of environments? We'll probably provide a different picture in terms of what we want and what we can deliver. But it's about us being cognizant of the envelope, what we get from the envelope that gets us to an amount of 203 million for the financial year. So what can we do with regards to that? Chairperson, I'm going to maybe just ask the other colleagues that I've mentioned earlier, just to provide additional responses based on the questions.
Just before we go, there was a hand from the speaker.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think it would be remiss of me not to at this point also indicate that the WCPP budget and the baseline due to COVID was significantly decreased during that period. So stelselmatig in Engels, systematically, we're trying to get back to that original baseline. So what you see today in the budget is not necessarily in the last year, but it's a culmination of years that led to this point. Also, and the Secretary touched on it about priorities. So we're very cognizant of the bigger envelope as Parliament, but also very cognizant of the fact that service delivery departments that needs to benefit from it, i.e. health and education, because ultimately it is those direct service delivery departments. But it's also important to put on record, Chair, that it's not that we do not go to Treasury during those MTech engagements and fight for the maximum that Parliament could get. I do take the point, and that is one of my, I smiled when Honourable Masipa mentioned that, because we cannot go to Treasury, ask for more money, and then we are underspending. And I think that is the point that Honourable Masipa is raising, and that is something that I'm also very passionate about and that I also advocate. But with that being said, our constitutional mandates and delivery doesn't get jeopardized in the process. So the fact that we achieve with a limited budget and limited resources is not an indication that we could do more if the budget was spent at 100%. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now hand over to those colleagues, and I see Mr. Titus is going to start.
Thank you, Chairperson. On the question from the Honourable Bombo around the research unit is located within the Directorate Institutional Enablement under Knowledge Management, responsible for providing research support to various committees. And in that context, we are speaking of proactive research, we're speaking of reactive research, and we are also speaking of cyclical research to the committees. And the cyclical part refers to the annual performance plans against, let's say, the annual reports, looking at that over time to see to what extent there is value add, growth, etc., in support of the analysis of that kind of information by a particular committee. Over and above that, the model for the WCPP is slightly different from how it is in the rest of the sector. So our researchers provide research to the committees or chairpersons of committees in particular, but also research to the corporate side of our business. So they do corporate research as well, in providing support to, let's say, the Office of the Secretary, the Speaker's Office, etc., etc. So that in broad strokes. At the moment, we don't have capacity to do long-term studies, Chair. Let's say studies over 5-10 years. We don't have capacity to do that kind of work. But what we are busy exploring is to see to what extent we can leverage off the relationships that we can and have begun to establish with institutions of higher learning. This province has 4 major universities, and we are looking to see to what extent we can leverage off that and integrate the parliamentary program, in particular the areas that committees are interested in into curriculum. We have begun conversations with institutions of higher learning with regard to that. In fact, we have had some conversations with UCT's Knowledge Hub to see to what extent we can synthesize and integrate the work that they do and the work that we are trying to do within the WCPP. Over and above that, the various parties also receive from the secretarial allowance is allowed and do in fact appoint their own researchers too to do party-related kind of research, desktop research, etc. That is completely managed by the various parties and is paid from the secretarial allowance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Chair. Just a follow-up with regards to the strategic partnerships. We'll put together a presentation for the members of POC. We do not yet have a formal agreement with the Commissioner for Children, although we do collaborate with them. For instance, on the Youth Parliament, we also got inputs from them. Mr. Honourable Member, I can say that in the last financial year, we spent a quarter of our programme in Cape Metro. So 3 months out of the 12 months was focused on Cape Metro. I don't, on the tips of my fingers, have exactly where we've been, but together with the team, I can actually put together the stats for the last parliamentary term and how much time we spent in each of the regions and different areas in the Cape Flats, if that's acceptable, Mr. Chair. Then just the question of Honourable Mbombo. One of the targets that we have in terms of interparliamentary relations is to establish an additional memorandum of interest or twinning agreement. We are looking very hard at Africa. It is difficult because there are not as many regional parliaments in Africa as there are elsewhere, but it is something that we are exploring and looking at. Thank you.
Thank you, Monsieur Chairperson. Maybe just to add to that, Honourable Mbombo. So in the 6th parliamentary term, we've established we have enhanced the relationship with the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association to such an extent that they approach the Western Cape Provincial Parliament when they need some assistance. So when I say when they need some assistance, I think it was in 2023, the CPA had a program in St. Helena with regards to committee work, etc. They were assisting the Parliament there. They had then requested whether the Western Cape Provincial Parliament is able to come and share their experiences as part of their program. One of our procedural officers was then designated to assist the CPA in attending their workshop in St. Helena to share our experiences and to assist. We get those requests quite often from the CPA in terms of sharing our experiences. We also, in the CPA or the SOCAD journal, and the CPA journal, we submit regular articles to them in terms of our experiences, and they then publish those in the journal that then goes out to other legislatures. When the other 8 legislatures ask us for assistance or want to come to us to come and learn from what we've been doing, if time and the resources allow, we then agree to those type of requests and share the experiences across the board. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add on to that, in the previous term, the previous Deputy Speaker will also championed the Women's Parliament, was also had various opportunities to make submissions or inputs at the Commonwealth Women's Parliament. So that kind of relationship and structure is there, and that is it's built up over many years. I'm very proud to say that WCPP is highly respected in that space, and very often gets invited to make these submissions and presentations. We also had, when we went through we shared our experience on the cyber attack, also in the previous term, and what we've done to try and mitigate that. So yes, and I think the procedural officer that the Secretary referred to is sitting next to you, Chair.
We did speak about her time in St. Helena. We had a very long chat. Colleagues, we're now going to move over to the presentation on the annual performance plan and then take questions onto that. I'm mindful of the fact that we have the whole Parliament here and Parliament still needs to run. So they all need to get back to their desks.
Chair, there's 103 officials in Parliament, just for the record.
Thank you. Member Barnes?
Just a small Anyana question, Chair. It slipped my mind. I think Secretary was presenting on the entrance and the exit of the parking area, and he said there's work in progress on the subject. Just one small Anyana question. Is there a time frame of completing the process? Thank you, Chair.
I suspect the Secretary is going to say over to you, Mr. Titus, but I'll allow him to do that.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm unfortunately not going to do that, Chairperson. So in my initial response, I had indicated about 2 weeks ago we had assisted DOI in terms of just clarifying what the proposals were that we had tentatively agreed to, and that assistance also included written correspondence that they were going to process within the 2 weeks. Mr. Titus will be following up by the end of this week with the DOI colleagues in terms of whether they've processed that, and maybe then also seek to find or seek to get firm timelines, Honourable Barnes, through you, Chairperson, on when we can expect something to happen. Because like I said, Chairperson, it has been something that's been coming on from the previous parliamentary term, and we do understand the concerns that members raise with regards to safety and security, especially in what is rather a unique parliamentary precinct where we have other tenants that's not part of the parliamentary precinct in the same building. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Mr. Secretary, we're going to hand back over to you for the presentation on the annual performance plan.
Chairperson, I'm going to hand straight over to Ms. Goldstone, who will take us through the 2024-2025 APP. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. So this presentation is on the annual performance plan, which is currently in play. A lot of what I presented in the Q4 report will now resonate. Okay, let me just go to the next slide again. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Okay, maybe just let me speak to the approach to developing the APP for 2024. Firstly, I think as the Secretary mentioned in his opening remarks, this is the final year of the strategic period. So the end of the 5-year term, the 24-25 APP would be that last year's APP. So being the last year, and because we want to be able to track our performance over the term, we've retained a lot of the content in terms of targets and indicators as per the previous years with some tweaks. So you will see that a lot of the indicators we've just discussed for Q4 of the previous year are in fact coming through in the 24-25 APP. As are other departments, you will also be aware that many are now currently in the process of developing a 5-year strategic plan for the new 5-year term. We are also in that process, so a lot of what you see here may change in the next year. So just to indicate some of the areas that we did amend, even though we kept the APP largely the same as in previous years, is the projects that have now been completed. So for example, the Oversight and Accountability model, which I spoke about earlier, has now been concluded, so there would be no need for us to carry it through as a new project into the new year. Although operationally, of course, there's still a lot of work that we need to do. Completion of the review of the rules I've spoken about as well, and the implementation of free public access, relatively new initiative, but it's now part of the operational work as opposed to a project which we had as we had it in the APP in the past. We also made some small technical refinements to the technical indicator descriptions, and then for the first time this year, our annual performance plan has a sub program called Security Services, which was not there in the past. It was previously Sergeant at Arms and located under Program 2. It now will be located under Program 1 as Security Services. So those are the shifts from the previous APPs. Now, just in terms of the macro framework and how we think about this Parliament before we get into the actual targets and indicators. The vision that was set for the 5-year strategic period was that we aspired to be the leading regional parliament, rooted in Africa, innovative, relevant, forward-looking, and in touch with all its people. Our mission, as stated there, is to be professional and innovative in our processes and work as we foster ethical and good governance, empower our members and staff to function optimally, facilitate the mandate, constitutional mandate of lawmaking, public participation and oversight in the interests of the people of the Western Cape, and promote the WCPP provincially, nationally and internationally. A lot of that has been just discussed in the previous input from the Speaker and the Secretary. Our core values are respect, transparency, honesty, integrity, professionalism, impartiality, efficiency, and also accountability. I've spoken to the core programs, the 4 programs, so that's just a recap, but it also includes the purpose of each of the programs. So Program 1, which I indicated, is largely about the support services and some of the governance and administrative aspects. The purpose is to provide overall strategic leadership and direction for the WCPP. So the budgets for the Speaker, the Secretary, the CFO's office, supply chain, as well as our IT services, digital services, knowledge management, research, and all of that. All of those budgets are sitting under Program 1, and also the targets linked to this program, you would also link to those activities will also be reflected under Program 1. Program 2, Parliamentary Support Services, to provide effective procedural advice, so whether in the House or through committees, and to facilitate public participation. And the key programs there would be plenary support, so what happens in the House and the procedures and processes surrounding sittings, for example, and then committee support, so all committee activities, as well as Hansard services. Program 3, public engagement. It's about ensuring effective public engagement and facilitating public involvement in the legislative and other processes. We've also now heard that it incorporates international relations or interparliamentary relations, as well as the public education and outreach aspects. So there's stakeholder management, public education and outreach, a little bit of international relations as well located there. All targets would therefore be reflected there that relate to those, as on the budgets. And then member support, really about enabling facilities and benefits to members and parties. So this program would cover enabling allowances for members and allowances for political parties. The capacity building for members also would fall under this program. These are strategic goals and objectives. We have 3 strategic goals. I won't go into too much detail here, but broadly they relate to the broad areas of our mandate. So the first one is around the procedural and related support to the House and to committees to make laws, basically to execute the mandate. The second one relates mainly to public participation, so it's supporting the promotion of meaningful stakeholder and intra-parliamentary relations. And then the last one is around strategic governance and institutional support services. And of course, we have strategic objectives which relate to all of the 3 goals. As part of how we are evolving and maturing as an institution, a decision was made that we needed to really, at some point, return to basics, is the term that was used, going back to basics. In other words, really honing in on what are the critical deliverables that we need to execute in order to execute on our mandate. And so a decision was made that these are the things that we needed to elevate. So it doesn't change anything in terms of the constitutional mandate, still lawmaking, oversight and public participation. Our strategic objectives are there as articulated, but this set of strategic priorities just elevates the critical areas of focus, particularly towards the end of the 6th term, and will likely also be in scope for consideration for the next 5 years. So the first one is building a credible Western Cape Provincial Parliament, by which we mean a respected, reputable and stable legislative body. So here we're very much concerned about matters of administrative efficiency, so how well the organization or institution is run, how well we are budgeting, but also issues around good governance. Improving and expanding citizen experience, a WCPP that is first and foremost a parliament for all the people of the Western Cape. Strengthening the core business, I referred to the core business programs earlier on, and this is really just about making sure that we provide, as the administration, we provide the support to enable members to execute their roles as parliamentarians in a very effective way, and also for the business of Parliament to proceed in an effective way. Strengthening support to legislators, similarly, it's the capacitation, the support that we're able to provide to members as they execute their functions. Improving the morale of employees was also articulated as a very important pillar as part of one of our strategic priorities for this period. And here the aspiration is that we really become an employer of choice, and that we are able to support employees to be a valuable constituent, and also we also just validate employees as that valuable constituent and contribute to their development and their sense of motivation and contentment in supporting the work of Parliament. The strategic impact, the intended impact, is a deepened democracy, where we are focused on building a stronger, deeper and more meaningful participatory democracy in the Western Cape. So these are the foundational strategic priorities that were embraced towards the end of the last term, and our discussion as we go forward into the next strategic period will be very much centered around how we give expression to these. Of course, we will, as the speaker indicated, tomorrow have extensive engagement with stakeholders around how they perceive the WCPP and how they can feed into the vision, but broadly speaking, this is the broad framework within which those discussions will take place. So in terms of APP indicators, targets and reporting cycles, I won't go into a lot of detail here because we did spend quite a bit of time on the quarterly performance report, and they're very similar, as I indicated, to the previous year. So again, we have compliance in terms of FUMPLA for the executive authority and the accounting officer. We will continue to measure member satisfaction and APP performance on an annual basis. We will continue to track the extent to which we are implementing even more of the strategic corporate programs like the IT digitalization strategy. So the extent to which we are able to become even more of a modern parliament by some of those initiatives. The HR strategy as well and the knowledge management strategy. We will continue to also seek to comply with CEPA, and therefore we've included it here until we reach that 100% or at least agreement on the measurement of our compliance on that matter. The digest of rulings will continue to publish as we will do, we will also continue to track the House resolutions and the extent to which our electronic papers are widely available to members, but also to the public. Draft committee reports, we will continue to also ensure that those are produced at the 100% standard in alignment with the standard operating procedures, as well as tracking of decisions of committees. So what we seek to do with that is basically just record that all the commitments, or all the decisions, resolutions, recommendations of committees, there is actually follow through on that. So we have a mechanism in place where we check that committees have actually made the contact with the relevant department, and that there is a response from the department, and that is all part of the mechanism within committees to ensure that we exercise our oversight effectively. And the target is obviously that we do that 100% all of the time. So every quarter is monitored. The number of additional functionality, again, we will continue to seek to improve the social media and digital access, as we've indicated before. Interparliamentary engagements, again, there will be approval of a plan for interparliamentary engagements for the year. As indicated, not much wiggle room for the current year. But there is a plan with stipulated activities, which we'll continue to track to see that those are on track. And we have scheduled, we've targeted to report on that on a quarterly at the end of the year in the fourth quarter. Sorry, not on a quarterly basis. Again, public education initiatives obviously will be a key focus for the current year in terms of what we measure. Strategic partnerships, again, we will seek to, and again, we've only listed one here, but obviously we seek to at any point embrace as many partners as possible that can further the work and the interests of Parliament. Public engagement initiatives, again, will continue as it has been with the outreach program to various districts, planned activities, as per the public engagement strategy, will also be tracked. And again, we seek to achieve 100% of that. The training and development initiatives for 2024, it will largely be the same categories, although especially with the emerging partnerships that we've developed with regard to these areas, there may be potential for more activity within each category. So, for example, we talked about, there was mention made of CPA, the CPA as an organization, which also facilitates a lot of the training and development work for members, including online platforms that are available to members on parliamentary matters of various kinds. So the approach going forward, so that is the APP for 2024-25, and the approach, as I've indicated, is to go, we're currently in the process of planning for the new strategic period. We have a draft 2025-26 APP already, which is actually a FUMPLA requirement, but because we're going into planning, there are likely to be substantial changes to that draft plan. It has been tabled in Parliament as per the FUMPLA requirement. So where we're at now is we're in the process of planning, and the FUMPLA requirement is that we produce a strategic plan within 6 months after the elections. So by November, we should have a draft strategic plan or a strategic plan for tabling. and also the new APP for the new year. So we're engaging in quite an in-depth process, which we hope to be a whole organization process and also involve all of our stakeholders to a much greater extent that we've done it in the past. And we want to really try to institutionalize this practice of really getting feedback from stakeholders, but also taking a much more critical and evaluative stance on the work that we do, so that we don't only rely on our and what we know anecdotally into or what we sense anecdotally as effective delivery of our programs, but that we also have more evidence-based sort of approach to the way that we budget and plan in future. I think with that, I will rest there, Chair. I think that's the end. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. I see no hands. But we will be engaging with this information over the next coming sort of months, and there'll be a lot more information also delivered to you as well. Just one request, Speaker, at our next engagement, would it be possible for members to have a look at the WCPP board game that was developed? Then, Speaker, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, absolutely. I can't believe we missed that one, Mr. Chair. Because that is, yeah, absolutely. We'll do a display on that. Myself and Ms. Fouchier will play the game. I just want to add on what Ms. Goldstone has said. As part of the strategic plan is to involve as many of our stakeholders as possible, which includes the members. So as part of that, we also have all political parties or leaders of political parties have been invited to an engagement. We actually had a discussion earlier this morning about also including in the next phase of what's happening tomorrow, opening it up to all members. So unlike departments, Parliament belongs to all members and all of us, and whether you are the governing party with the most seats or whether you have a single seat in Parliament, you're all members of Parliament. And so the intention is to include and have a consultative process to put together the strategic plan, because it's ultimately our Parliament. So I think it's important just for members to take note of that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Secretary, Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure if you've got any concluding remarks, but I will then ask members that we break for 10 minutes, just for a comfort break and to grab a cup of coffee and to maybe warm up your limbs as you walk to the members' lounge. And then we'll excuse the colleagues from Parliament, but we will come back for our report and the consideration of resolutions, minutes, etc. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, Deputy Speaker, and the Secretary, as well as the team. It's nice for the members to have met you face to face all at once. and the partnerships that the WCPP have. I must say I find it very interesting that a Chapter 9 institution of this Parliament, the Commissioner for Children, is not a partner when that Commissioner reports to this Parliament. So I think we might have to have some engagements through the Chairperson of the Standing Committee on Premier and Constitutional Matters to look at the role of the Children's Commissioner, and when that meeting happens on Friday, maybe just a nudge there for more strategic partnerships with the Commissioner for Children. And it's also strange that the question around partnerships with other legislatures in South Africa was sort of skimmed over and we moved to Africa very quickly. So it might be interesting to see what those partnerships look like within the Interparliamentary Forum locally as well. So how do we collaborate with the KZN legislature or the Gauteng legislature, etc.? Because we do that as committees, we engage with them, but what are the formal relationships? And that's something that I'll bring up with the engagements that we're having with the NCOP as well. Look at how do we collaborate. So those are the resolutions I have. Are there any other resolutions? Member Barnes, do you want us to request feedback on update as it becomes available on the access and parking situation? Okay, so we will just put that as a standing item that the committee must be furnished with regular updates as to the progress.
Mr. Jacobs, one about the stats for the last parliamentary term on the Cape Metro public participation.
And then also we'll formalize the request, Member Jacobs' question around the amount of public education and outreach engagements that's taken place with a breakdown per district, so inclusive of what happened in the metro and also the rest of the province. Maybe what we should also ask for is the annual plan for education and outreach, because the programming authority only gets for a specific period, but it would be nice to have all of that in one plan so that members can also give input to say, you know what, there's a community here that you've missed, or there's groups of people that you've missed there, etc. Member Bryant?
Yeah, no, I did find that interesting as well, because the response was that there was a third in the metro, but the metro comprises more than a third of the population, so it would be interesting to see that, Joe.
I think also one of the things we struggled with in the previous Parliament, that there was only some members that brought communities to Parliament. So there's a really big opportunity to bring groups of people to Parliament, and that should be facilitated by Parliament. So what's happened in the past is if you bring, say, 60 people from Mitchell's Plain, you end up paying for those 60 people to come, but there's scope for those people to come and visit Parliament. And what we need to look at is how do you broaden the type of engagement. So if you're bringing a group, say, for instance, from Kanaland, then it's not that they're coming to the WCPP, but they should be going to visit other institutions in the vicinity as well. So are you going to museums? Are you going to the other legislatures? Are you going to the library, etc.? I think that's one of the challenges because, we don't exist sort of in a vacuum. And if you've got these strategic partnerships that you're trying to form, isn't that the best way to sort of start doing it as well? Are there any other resolutions? Member Petrus?
Yes, Chairperson, what about the targets that was not met?
So what will happen is with the next report, they will give us an update on how. So some of those targets are further in the year and they still need to sort of meet them. So what they've done now is they've given us a copy of their annual performance plan, and then in October, as soon as we get it, just when the programming authority agrees to it, there will be a 3-week period where all committees will sit and go through these, what we call the APPs, the annual performance targets. And then just before December, we will then go through the annual reports as well, and we'll review how where targets have been met, where targets have not been met. What I suspect is also going to happen, mostly for departments, with the government, the national government re-establishing targets and rejigging their annual performance plans, there might be some changes to targets as well, because with the National Planning Commission, what generally happens is all departments, including Parliament, follows national sort of frameworks around targets. So some of these targets that were not met, they'll come and report back. And then we also have to ask those hard questions on why you're struggling to meet certain targets. One of the things that I found interesting, and I don't know if Member Masipa's question was aimed at this point, is you're saying in certain areas you're doing so well and you're exceeding the targets, but you're sending money back. So shouldn't you increase the targets and be a little bit more ambitious if you've got that money to do it? You have to put your mic on.
My question on that one is really totally different. It's about meeting constitutional obligation, as Speaker has said, really, because it's nice to have this target, but are we meeting our constitutional, obligation with what we do?
That's a question that this committee will have to answer as we go about and do our work, because we have to hold Parliament to account, and we have to make proposals to improve the business processes within Parliament. And I think we also have an opportunity, once we've identified what our focus is going to be, to look at how do we then break up those focus areas into subgroups where you can actually specialize in specific things. I think one of the things that we should look at is, so what are the types of strategic partnerships that we want for Parliament in terms of helping them meet the objectives, and then who is going to drive that? Is it driven by the Speaker and the Secretary, or is it something that members of the committees must drive? What will happen is there is a forum called the Chair of Chairs that's coordinated by the Deputy Speaker. And what that committee will also do is to meet with chairpersons to help then start the process of planning what the committee's program is. And what we need to look at is, how does what happens in other committees also feed back to the type of oversight that we do? Because I think what we have to push for is that this committee becomes the custodian of the improved oversight model, the standard operating procedure and oversight. Because what does oversight look like in a rural community versus what does it look like in the metro? And also, I was listening to Mr. Latif saying that there is advertising available on social media. But one of the challenges we have is if you put something on the WCPP social media pages, there's no engagement with the citizens from the WCPP. We had during the seats bill, for instance, there was a member of the public who became the moderator on our Facebook page, answering people's questions. And this person was going, okay, this is your question, this is the section. And we found it very strange that there was nobody from Parliament that was doing that kind of moderation. We also turned the YouTube comments off, for instance, which was a tool of engagement we had at the beginning, because certain members they didn't like being referred to as by certain cartoon character names. So they voted for that to be turned off. But that was good engagement. And if you had somebody from the WCPP to answer people's questions, that increases engagement. So we have to look at that as well, especially now that we're zero rating visits to the WCPP website, because it's free to visit the WCPP website. So we should see those engagement numbers increase. What's interesting as well, previously, we used to actually get those engagement targets as part of this report. And it's one of those things was not included. So how many people logged on to Facebook? How many people logged on to YouTube? That was normally provided. I suspect the numbers went down, therefore it wasn't in here. But that's also something we have to monitor, because if you're spending money on that, you have to measure. And if you're saying that you're an accessible Parliament, but how accessible are you really? Because if you're not getting that kind of feedback. But they are employing a new person to help with social media. So I'm hoping they do that. But it's something that we have to push for as well. What are you measuring and how are you engaging with the people as well? Because you can have as many workshops as you want, but if your audience is now online and you've paid for them to be online, you also have to engage with them there. Cool. Colleagues, there's nothing more from my side. Wasima, are you happy? Masipa, you're going to throw a spanner in the works?
I just wanted to ask something. Regarding the people that we bus from Kanana land and so forth, who pays for them?
So it depends what the program is. If you're organizing it as part of your commemorative or your political party engagement, then you pay for it. But my advice would be that you plan that with the public education outreach, because they've got a budget for that. Okay. So they will also bring people in. Sometimes you will arrive here and there'll be constituents that will come and talk to you because they're from your constituency, but you didn't invite them, but they're here. So that's why I'm saying it's important to have that program to see where they are planning to go and who are they planning to bring, so that we can also fill the gaps and say, actually, we want these people, etc.
Fantastic.
Cool. Colleagues, thank you very much for your time, and thank you to those members who joined us online. This meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
See you on one shot.
And thank you, Benedicta, for whitening my trouser. My trouser is now white.
Explain that to your wife.
Now I have to now explain when I get home. I was under a blanket. In the chamber. In the chamber, no, with Mrs. Benedicta. No, Benedicta, you don't warn me about these things, eh? Mebans, Ushap. Ushap. Ke sharp le nna man. Wa bona ke mathate. Eh? Ke re wa bona hore I'm in trouble now. I'm going home now. Under the blanket. At the committee meeting.
And working hours.
Working hours, I know. Hey. Where's Chief Whip? Is he gone? Ben Simon, some questions here. Some message. John Panzai, good morning. Okay, see you guys. You guys, committee assistants, you're just making us so cold.
And we don't control that.
But why are
They made it colder.
Please, man, can you warm up this room before we come and then we can give it?
We had people, but I don't know who they were. I don't know how much to say off because my computer died. My laptop died. Thank you, sir. Is that enough for you now?
Are you taking this
You can use the phone for nice and reading. For reading.
Yes, your phone.
I know. Like to see what they read.
When I got
Thank you. I don't have a meeting this afternoon here. Huh? Is there no meeting this afternoon? I don't know.